Hello and welcome to everyone for this sixth and final in this first series of the Flourishing Student webinar series. And it's wonderful to see so many familiar faces back again on this call, and also some of you new as well. I'm just scrolling through right now the group of people we've got with us today, and it's great to see them and faces from around the world again, which is I think has characterized all of these webinar series so far. I'm just going to say a couple of words of introduction at the beginning, and then hand over to our speakers today, Emma and José, who will be taking us through the seminar webinar presentation. The first thing I just want to say is that hopefully you've really enjoyed this series so far. This is, as I say, we've had insights from around the world, from the UK, America, and this is our first instalment from Spain. And all the past webinars, for those people who are just catching up, are on the Jubilee Centre website, so you can catch up for the other 5 as well. Given the popularity of this series, many people watch these afterwards, register for the series, and then watch these afterwards. We've had nearly 500 people register for the series, and we get a lot of people rewatching the videos afterwards. Given the popularity of the series, we're really pleased that we're going to run a second series next year, and we'll be advertising the details and the dates of that very soon. But we've got speakers signed up from US, including Harvard, Hong Kong, Singapore, Spain, etc. So again, another global series looking at insights of character and ethics and flourishing within higher education. So look out for the details of that second series coming soon. But today, as I say, we hear from our colleagues in Spain at the University of Navarra, although I know, Emma, you also hold a joint position in Amsterdam as well. Spain is, in particular, is a country that seems to be really leading on a lot of work around character education right now. We had and some of you, I can see, were at the event last week in Rome for the European Character Virtue Association, and it was incredible to see how many Spanish colleagues from various different universities were speaking and giving papers to that topic. So Spain is a place to really look to right now, I think, for leading the way in a lot of work on character education across the board, but including in particular for this series in higher education. So our speakers today, Dr. Emma Cohen de Lara, who's the director of the Leadership as Service Programme, and Professor José de Torralba, who's assistant to the Vice President for Student Affairs, both of them at the Civic Humanism Centre for Character and Professional Ethics, as I say, at the University of Navarra. And this centre is something that's definitely inspired our own work at the Jubilee Centre, as it carries out research into what a humanistic education brings to society. And I think what I like about it, and what I hopefully will learn more about today, is showing how this is particularly applied to the perspective of character and virtue in professional ethics. Of course, so many courses and so many kind of professional training courses of ethics should be at least conducted in higher educational spaces. And so it'll be fascinating to hear from our speakers today about how their kind of research is informing what they do. Like last time, there will be questions at the end. Please feel free to post your questions as we go along in the chat. But likewise, if you want to come in and raise your hand and ask a question at the end, then I'll make sure I bring you in as well to ask your question live to our speakers. So I'll hand over now to Emma and Jose, and leave it to you, and I'll come back at the end and share the questions. So thank you very much again, Emma and Jose.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. So it has been wonderful to follow this webinar series throughout the academic year. And so today we are going to speak, both of us, Emma and myself. Okay, wait a second. No, okay, here we are. So the overview of our presentation will be, there will be a brief introduction by Emma, and then a second part on the vision we had when we started the center and the project. And I will be talking about that. And then finally, Emma will focus on the Leadership as Service program.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for the invitation, and thank you, José, for starting. So how did it all get started? We attended the Jubilee Center workshop in June 2022. And this was a workshop on supporting the establishment of character education research centers in Europe that took place in Birmingham, which was very helpful. The Civic Humanism Center was inaugurated in September 2022, and it's based at the Institute for Culture and Society, the university's research center for the humanities and social sciences. We received a very generous financial support from a foundation called Funsiva that funded us for the first year. The focus of our center is we seek to develop educational interventions and also do research on these interventions. We work with a small core team, but we have a larger interdisciplinary team of collaborators in philosophy, education, psychology, sociology, management or economics, and literature. The center has 3 pillars. There's the models of liberal education. The second pillar is university mentoring and development of character. We actually will focus mainly on that for this presentation. And professionalism and ethical leadership. And I think we have the 3 pillars, from the Civic Humanism website. So if this interests you, then please, send us an email or Google the website. Our current projects are, we seek to develop a project on professionalism, but the main current project that we're running is the Leadership as Service program. I'm going to say more about that later on in the presentation. We also have a project that's focused on developing great book seminars and curricula for both university and high school level. This is a 3-year project with 12 institutions. And if you're curious about this, please feel free to ask questions about it. It's not necessarily in the presentation, but my colleague José is very active in this. So.
Okay, so about the vision. So the idea is that I will say a little bit more about the Spanish-speaking educational context at the university level. But the idea is that we feel that a more complete conception of professions, what being a professional or becoming a professional amounts to, and what are the aims of university education is needed in our context, educational context. Here we follow the tradition of studies in professionalism. Here there's this famous paper by Edmund Pellegrino on professionalism in medicine, but you can find similar work in other areas like business, teaching, nursing, etc. There is a recent, I think it's 1 year old now, Jubilee Center framework for virtue-based professional ethics, where also the issue of professionalism becomes the focus, and we very much work along these lines. I mean, we were very happy to read the Jubilee Center's framework because it really touches on all the questions that we had and provides very good guidance for the kind of work we would like to do. We are currently working on a paper on rethinking professional education at the Spanish and Latin American universities, and that will be on the link between professionalism, humanistic education, and character development, which are the 3 pillars of our project of the center. We presented the paper at last year's ECPA conference, European Character and Virtues Association Conference, and we are currently working on it for publication. Just a second. And now I will, sorry about this. Fine. So about the vision and the problem we would like to solve in our educational context. So university education in the Spanish-speaking area, there is, I mean, for the past at least 15, 20 years, probably even more, growing criticism of the career focus and disciplinary orientation of universities. And well, some of this criticism is just saying, okay, I mean, the university has lost, you know, its identity. There is that's a problem that cannot be solved, etc. We try to take another path or another approach to that same problem, which is, okay, fine. I mean, if students come to our universities and families send their children to our universities, mostly to become a professional or to become qualified as a professional for business, teaching, law, whatever. Let's try to think about what a profession amounts, becoming a professional amounts to, or what's the meaning of being a good professional would be the question. And by thinking on that, maybe we can change the way education is provided in Spain, change and improve. So, and the key point will be to show or to argue that any profession has an intrinsic moral dimension, and that it is a means of formal and social transformation. So that a profession is not just about getting a salary or about self-recognition or becoming, you know, someone in society, but it has an intrinsic moral dimensions and is a means of personal and social transformation. So, and that will be the next step in this argument or this reasoning, is that an adequate professional education, so that's what universities are offering nowadays, must consider such dimensions. And usually these dimensions are not taken really into account or not integrated into the curricula or the teaching. And that will be another step in the argument that ethical qualification for a profession cannot be limited to acquiring knowledge, like knowing principles or norms, but it involves also the cultivation of intellectual and moral habits in the student. That's very uncommon in our university context, and I would say mostly in Europe, but it is evident that to become a good lawyer, you cannot just limit the education you provide to some kind of technical knowledge or theoretical knowledge. There are matters of justice, of personal qualities that you need to develop if you want to prepare lawyers for the society, or the lawyers that the society needs. So professional education ultimately aims to develop a way of being. That will be the key concept of the key word. Because a way of being is a specific character in the student, and that's in the literature on professionalism is called professional identity. And the idea, you can find that in Pellegrino and in many other authors. Like, I mean, the aim of university programs, like in law or teaching or medicine, is to help students become a lawyer, a teacher, a physician, with all the qualities, habits, and dispositions that a good lawyer, teacher, and physician should have or needs to have to address the challenges of the profession. Well, it is true that also in the past years, 20 to 30 years, some core curriculum programs have emerged also in Spanish-speaking universities in order to what we call supplement the education offered by career-focused university education. And that's great. I mean, and we at our university, we have, I would say, a strong core curriculum program. However, we claim that we think that this approach is insufficient. Why? Because core curriculum programs frequently become a mere formative add-on that does not shape the educational curriculum in a comprehensive way, and so it may perpetuate among students the idea that it is one thing to prepare oneself for a profession and something else to receive a general humanistic and character education. And part of our project or vision is to avoid this way of seeing what humanistic education or character education provides the students. It's not something that is extra, which is something which is great and fine, and even families or students will really like, but it's just extra. We want to argue that it's not an something extra added to what a standard professional education should be, but it's part of what a standard professional education should be. And how can you achieve that? But I mean, always through curriculum design. And so professional identity should be part of the formal and or informal curriculum, and not just part of the hidden curriculum. I mean, most of you are familiar with these concepts in education. And as a matter of fact, I mean, any institution has a hidden curriculum, and any institution conveys a way of understanding what to become a lawyer, physician, or a teacher is or requires. But most of the time that's hidden. It's not explicit. So there's no reflection on that on the part of the institution or the faculty, and that's a problem because you may simply convey the vision that is dominant in society, and perhaps that's not the best one, or perhaps it is. But in any way, I mean, it should be explicit, and for that vision to become explicit, it should be part of the formal and informal curriculum. And so by formal, we mean the courses, and informal will be, I mean, the whole array of activities that university offers students. So finally, almost finally, on my part, so how do we plan, or we think we could implement this vision? So we began with Leadership as Service program, which is an extracurricular activity at the University of Navarra. As a matter of fact, it's just a complement to the education that the students receive in the degree, like the core curriculum does. However, we see this as an intermediate step to pave the way for a full-fledged curriculum transformation. That will be the vision, or the aim, or the dream, if you prefer. So last year, we had a pilot 9-week Leadership as Service program at the School of Economics. And this year we had a complete 17 program with student representatives. That was because they are the leaders, or some of the leaders at the university. And that was a very good experience. You will hear more about this later. And then finally, we did translate the framework by the Jubilee Centers and the Oxford Character Project on character education at the universities. We had an event at the university, also online, open to other people from mostly Spanish-speaking universities. The framework has been distributed to administrators and vice deans for students at different schools. And we see that this framework's approach provides a way to integrate diversity of educational offering at our university. So the office of the vice president, I'm academic assistant to the vice president for student affairs, really sees that this is a way to provide a theoretical and educational solid framework for the mission of the University of Navarra in this case, and I would say most of, or if not all, universities in Europe and elsewhere. Good. Emma, so now you have.
Thank you. Let's see if we could go to the next slide. So I'm going to say a bit more about the Leadership as Service program that we've been implementing. This is actually the announcement of the pilot program that we started in the spring of 2023. And there's a picture of the students who did the program this past year. The nice thing is when we finished the pilot program, we wrote a paper that was accepted in the International Journal of Ethics Education. That's open access. And one of the nice things I think about this paper is that it has the full curriculum in terms of the readings and the activities that we did in the pilot program. So if you're interested in maybe some of the more specifics of the program, then this is a good place to take a look, or email us, of course. We developed the program in collaboration with the Oxford Character Project. They have the Global Leadership Initiative project, which is actually aimed at postgraduates, whereas our program, for different reasons, is aimed at third, fourth, and fifth year bachelor students. So there's a slight difference, but they were very generous in sharing their materials. So we adapted a lot of their materials and some of the activities. And we also followed, by and large, the virtues that the Oxford Character Project is seeking to develop. We both share a neo-Aristotelian approach to leadership. And in the program, as we ran it this past year, that's a fuller version, so it's 17 weeks. And it meant that we had more room to incorporate sessions on personal purpose, which is something that the students really enjoyed. Again, also this year. I think for students who are around 20, 21 years of age, personal purpose is something really nice. It's very nice to get the opportunity to think about what their personal purpose might be. The full-blown program also had 13 sessions on particular virtues. So I'll talk a bit more about that. We had a colloquium with a guest speaker, and the program includes a mentoring program called To & Co. I'll say a bit more about that as well. So to start out with the purpose workshops, there are colleagues who are actually part of the sort of the larger team, Rodrigo Bandra and Alvaro Yeo, Javier Garcia Manglano. They wrote a small booklet, which is in Spanish, but has also been translated now into English, luckily, which is really a workbook about discovering your personal purpose. The theoretical background is we take from Chris Johnson, talks about the need for a blueprint or a sense of purpose orients life as a whole. Purpose involves a contribution that a person from his or her uniqueness decides to make to others. So there's also a really relational dimension to personal purpose as how we conceptualize it. What our colleagues do in the booklet is they conceptualize purpose based on 3 dimensions. One is coherence, so a sense of personal identity. 2 is significance, and that has to do with one's values. And 3, both of them result in a sense of purpose or a sense of mission. And really, what I think is the nice thing about the booklet is that it's by and large mainly consists of practical exercises. So students really get to work on personal purpose. It's less theoretical reflection, more practical. Such as they draw up an axis of significant life events where they felt that they were meaningful to in their events that were meaningful in their lives, but when they were also meaningful to others. There's an external feedback exercise. There's an exercise on prioritizing values, one on writing a letter to one's future self, and so forth. These are just some examples. I have to say, so I also teach in Amsterdam, which is a different audience, a different type of students in some ways, but they also really appreciated this booklet. And so I think from personal experience, it really works with a wide range of students. I saw a question whether it's available. It's certainly online. So, well, if you send me an email, then I can give you a link. I think right now only the Spanish version is online, but we might be able to help you to the English version. So then there are the sessions on the virtues. Now that we had a longer program, we could also include more virtues. So we actually included integrity, which was not part of the pilot program. And then we did two sessions on each of the virtues that you see listed here. We try to have a distribution in terms of intellectual, moral, performance, and civic. One of the things that we found, and that was also part of our purpose, is that it increases virtue literacy of the students. We had a variety of readings, videos, or TED Talks sometimes. We also worked with a group of teachers, so it wasn't just José and me, but we had, I think, 5 or 6 different teachers who each taught a specific virtue. And then there were several practical assignments as well, such as a gratitude journal. And then finally, one of the nice things about the University of Navarra is that it has an established mentoring program, which I believe is not mandatory, but we try to offer it to the participants in the Leadership and Service program. And in both years, all of them decided to participate in the mentoring program. It means that each student gets a personal mentor, and then there's this book written by one of our colleagues that, it's again quite a book with quite a practical focus. So students select a competence by means of a questionnaire and 3 other reporting questionnaires, which is a nice way to try and figure out what competence or what character trait that they want to work on. And then they draw up a plan of work, and they meet with a mentor on a regular basis, and they talk about their experiences and their growth. And I think we have a picture of what the competence selection looks like. Yeah, so once the student fills out her own questionnaire and that's the blue line, looks complicated, but kind of neat, I think. And then the external evaluations, the 3 other reporting questionnaires, is the red dotted line. And so then the student sees, okay, where do I value myself? For example, a student may think, oh, I'm really good in time management. But then it turns out that other people actually think that time management may need some work. And it's just a tool to help the mentor and student decide on what competence they want to work on. So again, this year we surveyed the students at the end of the program to see what their experiences were. The first results coincide with the findings of the Oxford Global Leadership Initiative, in that the program can make a valuable contribution to the ethical and professional development of postgraduate students, in our case, undergraduate students. In addition, the Leadership as Service program we found promotes virtue literacy. So one of the things that a student reported this year was, for me, the program has been a reinforcement of what I theoretically knew and what I live. It helped me to stop and think about what I do and to reflect on my life. It also seems to promote awareness of personal purpose. Again, a student comment, thanks to this reflection, I became interested in knowing what I want to be in the near future and what I want to achieve. And then we got to thinking, and in line with Aristotle's observation, it looks like LASP helps students to become what we call agents of praxis, in the sense that they sort of start to own their own moral development. First of all, through deliberating on the overarching end of their lives. So one student comment was, the purpose workshops brought you closer to knowing where the path of one's purpose or ultimate goal of life leads. And we see this, and we think that the students also see this as a precondition for practical wisdom, so moral deliberation, to work well, which is also something that Christiansen points out in Aristotelian character education, in the sense that human beings need a kind of a blueprint of life, a kind of a vision of their own moral purpose, that helps them, that provides them with a frame to make moral decisions on a daily basis. And so one student says, I have developed a very good ability to rationalize and understand things that we don't see on an everyday basis. In practically every session, I've asked myself questions and learned to think beyond what we see on an everyday basis. So I think that is what we have. There's the bibliography. So thank you. I hope there are any questions that we can clarify.
Thank you very much indeed, Emma and José. And it might be, is it possible if you, shut down the slide, that's great. And then we can see everyone we've got with us, and makes it a slightly better community of us together. Thank you so much indeed, both of you. That was really fascinating. insight into both, as I suspected, kind of a nice kind of theoretical understanding of your approach in Navarra and wider, but also how that looks practically. I've got questions myself, but I'm hoping other people will post questions. I've got a couple of more practical questions that I'll ask you in a minute, just from the chat. Well, I give time for other people to either put their questions in the chat, or indeed, if you want to raise your hand, please do raise your hand, and I'll bring you in to ask a question directly. So just the first, I mean, the practical question, first one was from Oscar about, is the book available for purchasing, which we're hoping it is, and where might they be able to purchase the book? I think that was the book you were talking about, Emma.
Yeah, the personal purpose booklet. It's available. Well, first of all, I know it's available online at the university website, and that's the Spanish version. And I know they're working on putting the English version online as well. I can put a link in the chat if that's helpful.
If you could do that, that would be wonderful. And I've just had a separate question directly to me just about the slides, and we will send the slides around for this, because there were people asking about your slides and references, etc. Now, so we'll send the slides around to everyone as part of the listings with this as well. Just while we wait for questions to come in, I just want to ask one myself, because I've been a real fan of service learning type programs as a way to really get at kind of professional ethics and character in a kind of quite experiential way at universities. And it's also the sort of thing that I'm trying to bring in myself to the University of Birmingham in my role there. The challenge I always find is how you do this at scale with quality, given the size of universities. It's challenging even at school scale sometimes to run really kind of authentic and kind of, you know, well organized service learning type programs. So have you got any suggestions or advice for how you know, you might be able to kind of really, I think you're talking about how you've integrated it into your programs, etc., but just something really around how you undertake these activities kind of at a university level scale.
José,
You want to go? So yeah, sorry, I'll go first then. Yeah, you mean scaling the program so that any student can...
Yeah, given the number of students you get at university, to run a quality program that isn't just tokenistic. Sometimes they are a bit tokenistic because they say you're going to do this, but then they're not really kind of genuine service learning, is what I'd say.
Yeah. Actually, we had this this issue came up last year. So because when the rectorate had to approve the program, because they have to approve everything that happens at the university, because the students get credit for this course, they said, oh, we would like to have, I mean, many more groups so that more students can benefit from this kind of education. And we said, okay, I mean, at this point, we cannot offer more than 25 seats in the course. And next year will be like this. We'll have one group because, of course, as you said, so developing this kind of program takes a lot of time and involvement by, I mean, the speakers, and then the mentoring, especially the mentoring, because we meet like around 6 times, which is student. So you will need many, I mean, a very large number of people involved. So there is this idea, that is only idea right now, to make a hybrid version of the program. So part in person, part online, so the students have, you know, watch some of the contents online, and then maybe have some larger sessions and then smaller groups, because we feel that the seminar style discussion or work, that's key to, and the one-on-one mentoring, that's key to the success of the program. So it's a challenge for us now. And that's where we're.
Yeah, and I mean, if we just responding briefly, because this is a challenge I'm wrestling with right now. If we think this is something genuine, then we should be putting and really important, then we should be putting the teaching capacity and staffing to make this happen at a scale, but that's a shift of mindset for certainly my university, and I think many other universities moving from a more perhaps traditional kind of modular with assignment end type program to some types of kind of really kind of genuine kind of ethic, character-based learning that runs throughout maybe a course with assignment or assessment done in very different types of ways. So there's a practical question, but there's also a mind shift or cultural shift that certainly for our organisation needs to take place.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a question from our friend Jorg. He says, is there also any content-related connection with the idea of servant leadership or servant learning as promoted by the Argentinian organisation CLASS? So I think actually the connection with servant leadership and kind of servant learning, I think, is what Jorg was getting at here.
Maybe I can, although I'm not as familiar with the program mentioned, but when we set up the program, we looked into the leadership as service literature, or the literature on servant leadership by Greenleaf. And we appreciate many of the aspects of that sort of theory. I think our program is a little bit more explicitly neo-Aristotelian, so we really try to push. We really accept the neo-Aristotelian framework and are very explicit about the virtues. We debated a little bit if we wanted to keep the name servant. We decided we want to keep it in terms of I think we think the notion of serving as a leader is very important, and that's central to servant leadership. And I think it's also central to our program. And it means that, for example, we've included the virtues of humility and gratitude. So I think there's a very logical connection, but our program may be a bit more explicitly very much focused on the Aristotelian virtues.
Perfect. And I'm sorry for asking all the questions, but yeah, have you had any challenge with the term servant? And again, it probably translates differently in Spanish, but sometimes we get challenged with the word service because people think it might be servile, and it's not necessarily, as a kind of an active citizenship and kind of an expression of a kind of self, which is often more kind of prominent in so many discussions around this.
Yeah, there's.
You go first.
I was just going to say there's some literature that's more critical about the term. To be honest, if I would implement the program at the University of Amsterdam, I would also probably receive quite a bit of pushback. I think it depends a little bit on the audience of students. I think I found the University of Navarra students, very sort of commonsensical in how they understand service in a traditional commonsensical way, that you want to be in relationship to other people, and that means for a leader that there's a disposition of service, I think.
I would only add that I don't think that in Spanish the word service has these servile connotations that in some English-speaking areas has. Not necessarily. I mean, it might have, but that's not. I mean, I don't remember any student, bringing that up, or any faculty for that matter. But we were very keen to have that in the title of the program, and to stress that the idea of leadership, or becoming a leader, or getting education for leadership, it should not be understood as leadership in the sense of success, but of service. And by service, we mean not just in Spanish we will use the word charity, doing charity, doing something that is extra, but understanding your profession as a way of serving society and other people, and so contributing to the common good. I'll mention something about the common good, because that came up in the questions we were last time. So the idea of leadership as service is leadership not as just success or mainly success, and service not just as something extra that you do out of, you would good heart, but something that is somehow required if you aim to be a good professional. That will be the idea. And then, so in the questionnaire last April, we asked the students about the common good. So, and it was relevant and interesting because they really didn't know how to answer that. So the answers were disparate. Why? Because we did not have any session specifically dealing with the common good and the connection of the common good and the profession to the common good. And that show us that when we asked them about prudence and humility and so on, they did have, after the program, something relevant to say. If we asked them about the common good, they didn't. So that was, we saw that as proving that, spending time working on a specific understanding of a particular virtue or concept really is helpful for them and changes the way they understand the profession or their life in the end.
Yeah. And I totally agree. Kind of around cultures, we've got to be aware of kind of cultural sensitivities and perhaps changing norms and language through the generations. But we've also got to take some leadership around some of this and not let some things just kind of slip by. But there's just because maybe we're afraid to use certain terms and certain roots that are rooted, as you say, very much in kind of a lot of classical literature. Next question was from Julie, who asks about clarifying what the actual service, I think it is, required as part of the last project. So have you got any examples of kind of what the service may look like to enforce the points you were making earlier?
That's for Emma.
Yeah, I think for Emma probably, yeah.
So any examples of service? I know the session on service actually looks at a movie, or it's an HBO series, Band of Brothers, and it's taught by an economist. And I think, yeah, so I'm not sure how practical this example is, but it very much looks at service as a relational concept, so that leaders are not necessarily leading the way in a more egotistical sense, but are a leader in relationship to others. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the question's getting at, Emma, do the students actually get involved in kind of service type activities, like volunteering type activities, and if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, okay, no, that's a more practical question. I was getting very theoretical. Yeah, oh, my apologies. I'm at work and the building closing. Sorry.
You're doing it in, I'm speaking in my native language. You're working through, so there's no need to apologize at all.
Yeah,
I should be apologizing for me and our education system over here. But anyway, that's another question.
Yeah, no, so we actually, the University of Navarra has a service learning program, Tantaka, if I pronounce it correctly. And we are exploring cooperating with them because the program is already fully working, and it would make sense to have a real service learning component in the Leadership as Service program. At the moment, it's not yet materialized, but we are looking into, I think Tantaka mainly has projects in the city of Navarra where students go out and do all sorts of things with the community.
Yeah.
I will only add to that. So last year at the ECBA conference, we had the same question by the former dean of the School of Education in Navarra, and she suggested that we included some kind of service learning activity with the students. And I mean, we think she's right, that will really improve the program. We haven't done it yet because we're sort of at the beginning, but so we think it's a good idea. We'll have that in mind, and we'll try to incorporate that to the program because it makes all the sense. If just to add one more idea, in each seminar they have at the end a practical activity or a practical assignment. So in order to practice virtues somehow, or to get experience of those virtues in real life. So if you could add, let's say, 1 or 2 activities or some hours a week on any service learning activity, that will be a great opportunity for them to reflect and to understand in practice what they've learned in theory in the workshops or the seminars.
Yeah, and I think it's that interrelationship between the kind of the theory and the practice, and then the reflection around that, which is certainly from the literature, but also my own experience, I think is so important there. The next question I think is kind of interrelated to that, from I think it's Peter, but I may be wrong, who was asking about you described this as a pilot and kind of how many years you're giving yourself as a pilot, and whether and I think you answered this briefly earlier about possibilities of scaling to a larger scale program. But clearly these things can't be done quickly and do come with challenges. So do feel free to kind of expand any further on that point, or we can move on.
Very briefly, I can say that so last year it was a pilot program. It was the first time in a university, and it was shorter, only 2 months. This year we had the full program in terms of the number of sessions. But it was still the first time we did the full program. So next year we are adjusting, making some minor adjustments, dates, things like that. And beyond that, I mean, the aim, or what university is really asking us to do, is to scale it up. But we still don't have the way of doing that.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's move on, because there's questions coming on fairly quickly now, to Dr. Dhiraj in India. Thank you very much for your question. Talking about a concept called Dharma, which I'm somewhat familiar with, but not particularly in the Indian Vedic scriptures, and saying that probably the best translation is kind of a form of righteousness. And the question is, how far will teaching about Dharma and duties with the professional get along with the professional curriculum? So I think there's something about whether there's a question, and I suppose that we're going lots of languages here now, because we're translating to English and then into kind of Spanish. But this idea of kind of Dharma, righteousness, whether that would be considered sitting comfortably alongside the sorts of approaches you've said to professional ethics in Navarra and indeed wider.
I can answer that briefly. So if by righteousness we mean also integrity, we did include a session, or 2 sessions actually, on integrity for that reason in the program. And as I was trying to argue in the first part of the presentation, we think, or we see our efforts as a way of enriching the understanding of what becoming a professional means. And that will, of course, I mean, so righteousness will be central to the notion of being a professional. In addition to that, to what extent universities accommodate these principles in action? I think that was the other question you had. Well, I can only say that the University of Navarra has professional ethics courses in all the relevant degrees, and that in particular the business school, where this question of being righteous is particularly relevant, has been praised internationally by accrediting agencies for the program on professional ethics. So as far as our university is concerned, it will accommodate this kind of principles in action, or try to accommodate them.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed. I'll move on to the next question now, which is from Claudia. I know, Claudia, if I get this question wrong, because I'm trying to interpret what you're saying, feel free. I can see you're on the screen there. Do you want to ask it directly? It might be easier.
Emma told that you have also a program about the great books, or could you tell us a little more about this?
Sure, yeah. Briefly, so at the University of Navarra, we began a great books program 10 years ago, and now it's fully developed. We're following.
And sorry, Emma mentioned this in relation with all this program. That's
with character.
Yeah,
sure.
Character.
I was going to get to that. So we have this program in Navarra, and then like 2 years ago, some high school leaders approach us and say, okay, we would like to have the same kind of program in our university, in our schools. But that's very, very uncommon in Spain. So we began a project which is has the intervention, the idea of developing a curriculum, including the reading of great books in seminars, and then doing research on that intervention. And that's what we are doing with 11 high schools now. And then there are a couple of universities that are also interested in the idea. I will just say two things briefly, how this connects to the wider project. So there's one line of work, which you know very well, because we've discussed it in person, is that the intellectual virtues approach. And when we learned about Jason Spurs and other people who have been working on that, we realized that the kind of virtues or competences that are developed in the Great Books seminars really overlap or are the same that of this list of the intellectual virtues. So our plan is to use all the scholarship that's been developed on intellectual virtues to assess, the Great Books seminars. That's our plan. That's one line of work. And the other line of work is how, going back to the vision of the center, so professionalism. And I said in my presentation that to become a good professional, a good lawyer, or good physician, you need to develop intellectual and moral habits. So the moral habits, we've been discussing this with LASP, Leadership as Service program, but the intellectual habits, of course, are also present in LASP, like humility, for instance, or prudence. But and this is a line of work we haven't yet begun work on, but it's already there. The idea that the core curriculum classes and particularly Great Books seminars will be the place or the way to develop these intellectual habits in university students. That will be the two lines of work.
Well, thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay. Haven't we got any more questions here? I'll just pause for a minute if anyone wants to either come in, either just by turning your camera on or putting your hand up or anything else like that, just to see if we've got any other questions from people with us. I think we'll leave it there unless there's anything else you want to just conclude with, Emma or José.
Thank you for the questions and interest. It's been really great.
Perfect.
Yeah,
well, thank you very much indeed to both of you for presenting and concluding this series for us in this first year. It's a wonderful way to finish off, and as I say, it's been I think what's been so fascinating is hearing the interconnections even in this set of questions around from the world and a kind of the common interest in this, but also kind of looking at the differences and challenges around kind of truly integrating kind of programs that got character at their heart and ethics at the heart into higher education. So we will continue, as I say, the series next year. We'll send details to everyone who's registered. We'll also be posting the video from this webinar alongside the other ones and send the slides around to those here in the next few days or so. But thank you very much indeed. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days wherever you are, maybe late at night or early in the morning, and we look forward to catching you next year at the second series, the webinar series. Thank you very much indeed.